Oh, baby, big show today. We're talking about the Lakers' demise.
Not so fast, hoophead.
What the hell are you doing
We
here?
finally figured out overtime. No, it's not a kicker shootout, but the NFL is so back. Hey, what's up, nerds? The king of summers here. Ever heard of analytics?
What?
Yeah. Opening day, 1 week from tomorrow.
All right, it is Wednesday, my dudes. Good to see you. Yeah, all those personalities just cooking between the ears. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Lotzia. A lot to get to, only 55 minutes to get to it. How much trouble are the Lakers in? Spoiler alert, quite a bit. We're going to talk about the best bets here to lead Major League Baseball in the RBI department. What else? Oh, Tiger on the prowl at Augusta. And why, when I grow up, I want to be Charlie Woods. But another big news, after all that off-season outrage after the shootout between the Chiefs and the Bills, the NFL has decided to change its overtime rules for the postseason only. I mean, if they were smart, they would just go to college overtime rules. Or yes, like Samir recommended yesterday, go to the kicker shootout. Why not? Suspense at an all-time high. Let's see what our panel thinks. So Reed T. Fowler, Pierce Dietrich, good to have you guys here this morning. Pierce, how you feeling about the overtime change here?
The overtime change is stupid.
Whoa.
And every one of all these suggestions you just made, those are stupid as well.
Whoa.
It's pretty simple. Just add a fifth quarter. Whoever has the most points at the end of the fifth quarter wins the game. There's not much to it. I don't see why we can't do that. Instead, we're going to add a rule, and then a year later, we've got to add a rule to change the rule that we made in place, and everybody gets a possession unless they score a touchdown the first time. But then if it's in the postseason, then you do get a possession. What are we doing? I'd rather have ties than have all these dumb rules.
God.
In fact, I would rather, let's just give people L's. If you don't win in regulation, you don't win. You just lost. In the real world, there's no overtime. If you don't get your job done on time, guess what? You get fired. So why are we giving second chances and all these opportunities to make up for something that you didn't take care of? Well, if we lose the coin toss, win in regulation so you don't have to worry about the coin toss. What are we doing? If we're going to have it, at least just do a fifth quarter. Come on.
Reed, what would you prefer?
Well, a lot of things are happening in the first 2 minutes of this show. We got James McAvoy and Split and Cold Open, and thank God Cold Opens are back because those are fantastic. Kudos to everyone behind the scenes and you, Emerson. Second, I am not surprised by the curmudgeon of this show, Pierce Dietrich, saying that let's add a fifth quarter. Well, you can't really do that with the CBA because adding a fifth quarter means they're probably going to be wanting to get paid a lot more, and they're going to have to go through arbitration. But we know Pierce loves arbitration and loves things to get to a point of litigation. So that's one. Number two, Pierce, if you don't win or if you don't win regulation, it's not just because you suck. It's because both teams are actually playing really well. And the reason, the impetus for this was the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't hate it. Now, to Pierce's point, I don't like it because you're just going to keep on changing things until it becomes a marginal change at the very end. And when does it stop? Because if you take a look historically at the overtime rules specifically, it's changed 3 times since 2010. That either means that they're listening way more to fans, which is kind of nice, but kind of weird and kind of stupid. Or 2, they just didn't have it right to begin with, which is probably the more operative philosophy or process. The thing is, though, Pierce, that the teams that since I believe 2010, when this whole process started to change, teams that have won the overtime, their toss, are 10-2 in something like that in terms of how good they are of winning the game. So when you have that much of a lean on one side of taking a team, I'm sure the numbers are skewed of my years and my stats, but when you have so much skewed to one side that if you win the coin toss, then you win the game, there is clearly something wrong. Right? It's the same as if we take anything, if it's skewed on one side, you got to get it back towards the middle. This is all a ploy to get the fans to watch more football. The fifth quarter is garbage because that just means you're going to have a sixth quarter, Pierce, if they try it after the fifth quarter and then a seventh quarter. And then you run the same argument that you were to begin with. I like it, but to Pierce's point, too much change is maybe not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there with like the 10-2 record. I mean, Pierce, you firmly believe like a winner essentially is okay being decided by a coin flip then.
No, I said none of that. I said you should lose. We shouldn't even do overtime.
So what the hell? So how do you
do overtime? Do a fifth quarter.
How do you figure out the Chiefs and Bills then?
You have a full quarter.
What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do if you tie in the playoffs then? That's what I'm saying. You say both guys lose. Someone has to advance.
Well, this is the rules
that's
only
easy. It's
apply
like hockey when they go to 7-8 overtimes. It's like the greatest moment in the world. Think of all the commercials that you could put into that kind of a contest. Just let it run. 9 quarters of full football, last man standing. What are we talking about? That's
It'll just
easy.
be cricket, Pierce. We'll have 3-day contests.
Pierce, you realize you're referencing a sport that also changes its playoffs, its format, its overtime format come the playoffs. That's what the NHL does.
That's what all the time.
Okay, I'm just saying you're contradicting your point when you reference what the NHL does. Yes, you do. Yes, you do, because the NHL changes its format come the postseason.
This is great.
You really do. So you're saying then regular season overtime in the NFL should be decided by a kicker shootout, and then when you get to the postseason in the NFL, it should just be like the 5th quarter, 6th quarter, 7th quarter. That's what you would want to see.
No, I hate shootouts in the regular season. They should play 7-8
God.
every single night.
Can't win. We cannot win. Let's get to some other news. Let's put a fantasy spin on some big headlines here, guys. Big news out of New Orleans. This is huge. No, not the Andy Dalton signing as the backup, but the Saints saying they're going to use Taysom Hill primarily at tight end. All right, you see the fantasy value like in that, and how good is this for Jameis Winston's stock, Reed?
I'm very interested to see what Pierce's response to this is going to be of a guy who probably shouldn't have been playing quarterback to begin with. Now it's tight. But going to my point, look, I always think a guy like him is going to have Taysom Hill's going to have value as a fantasy entity, right? As a fantasy investment, maybe at the end of your bench, because look at what he's done. I know Sean Payton is not there anymore, and he loved a guy like what he can do, right? And his type of player. But look who Hill has in front of him. It's Jameis Winston, Ian Book, and Andy Dalton. And I think Blake Bortles, the whispers of the Bort coin, are also in New Orleans. That's the 4 quarterbacks, right, that are ahead of Taysom Hill. I'm pretty sure that if any one of those players either doesn't make the squad, gets hurt, Taysom Hill is going to be in the back of Dennis Allen's mind of, we were 7-2 when Taysom Hill was a starter at quarterback. Right? Wins and losses. That's all these coaches talk about. It doesn't matter what the stats are. It's wins and losses. But for a fantasy purpose, we love the stats. He threw 4 interceptions against Dallas last year and had 27 DK fantasy points. He had 0 touchdowns throwing and 2 touchdowns on the ground the week after and went 26 DK fantasy points. He should always have a spot at the end of your bench for a season long. For DFS, you can't really predict it, so it's a moot point. But for season long, put him at the end of your bench because at some point, Taysom Hill is going to be in that conversation again.
All right, Pierce, why make this move and what's the fantasy impact of it?
Yeah, I'm with Reed. I think ultimately when things shake out, he's going to end up playing quarterback. That's his strength, quarterback, receiver, running back. He's a jack of all trades, kind of like myself and Reed. Reed's an NFL expert, golf expert, and a surfing expert. Now, if Reed just focused on surfing, I don't think it'd work out for him. But because he's a jack of all trades, that's where his value is. It's the same thing with Taysom Hill. That's what works for him. You can use him in a lot of different options. We saw Tebow try to make this move late in his career. Didn't work. Maybe if Tebow would have done it early on, it would have worked.
Yes.
Hill's 31 years old. He's pretty, long in the teeth as well. So I don't know if he's going to be able to make this. We never really talk about how good of a route runner he is or a pass blocker he is. He never really was a receiver all that much. Now he's only going to catch passes. I don't see this working. Keep using him in the way that he was. Some of those games last season, he was banged up. He also didn't have anybody to pass to. He threw all those picks against Dallas. Dallas was known for interceptions. He's going to work his way back into the mix, whether it's based on his own merit or by Winston just being pure Winston. So don't give up on it just yet.
And Bill Belichick tried to get Tebow to change positions. So maybe had he done that earlier, might have had an actual longer NFL career.
Urban Meyer came into the picture.
Yeah. That was a debacle. We don't have to open up that can, buddy. Okay. We want to have a good day. All right, the 49ers have not been able to unload Jimmy G. So with him still on the roster, Kyle Shanahan is refusing to say that Trey Lance will 100% be the starter next season. Listen to this, guys. Shanahan saying, "We brought Trey here to be that eventually. And I think that will be sooner rather than later. But when Jimmy G gets his surgery and we can't upgrade our team by getting some good picks until people feel good about that surgery, I'm all right with that. We're not just getting rid of him to get rid of him, end quote. So who is buying that? Pierce, are you buying it?
Yeah, I mean, apparently GMs across the league dislike Jimmy G as much as Steve Buchanan, and no one wants him. So San Francisco doesn't have any choice. They've got to keep him, maybe on draft night. Maybe an opportunity will present itself to make a trade, but there's not a lot of teams that really need a quarterback or at least see Jimmy G as an upgrade worth trading picks for. Carolina's not going to do it. Houston's not going to do it. Seattle's not going to do it. And I don't even know if San Francisco would trade him to Seattle. I just don't see where he can go. So they're just going to have to keep him. But the optimistic look is that, and this is not good for other teams, but when preseason comes along and mini camps happen, inevitably a quarterback will get hurt.
Yep.
And that's when San Francisco can try to trade him to a desperate team. But for the next 6 months, they're probably sitting on him.
All right, Reed. I mean, I know GM John Lynch said no scenario. He sees no scenario in which Garoppolo is just going to be released.
Yeah, it's $25.5 million, right? Like as a dead cap.
Yeah.
I mean, they can cut him, right? So they don't have to pay that. But like that's something that, this is how I take it, Emerson. And I don't know if Pierce is a golf guy, but you know this. You buy new clubs, right, in the winter season, right? And you pay a lot of money for those new clubs. And you had your old clubs, your Pings. If you're Samir, you like your clubs, right? If you're Emerson, you like your previous Pings or TaylorMades, whatever. But then you get the new TaylorMades. Then you get the Stealth Driver, right? And you paid a lot of money for it. When it comes season of golf, you're not going to leave those hanging just because, right? Because you like your old clubs, because you had some success. You're going to be using them. So Trey Lance is a starter. That's for one. He's going to be the starter week one. They paid so much money. You got to follow the money. Number two, exactly like Pierce mentioned, we saw this in 2016 with Sam Bradford when he was with the Eagles and they drafted Carson Wentz second overall, is that they couldn't really do anything with Sam Bradford until another team, right? I think the Minnesota Vikings lost their quarterback. That's when Teddy Bridgewater had that freak injury, and then Sam Bradford became their quarterback, and they got a lot for him, right? The Eagles did. So that's probably what San Francisco is doing. Well, let's not get it twisted, right? Trey Lance is going to be the starter week one. They paid a lot of money, and they're going to want to see that return on investment.
Guys, great job this morning. Really appreciate the help. We're still going to talk about best bets for guys to lead Major League Baseball in runs batted in. But right after this break, we're going to head over to the NBA and see which bets our analysts are chasing tonight. All right, the latest episode of the Golic and Smetty podcast is available today. You can check it out on iTunes, Google Podcasts, a Stitcher and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Just go get it. Go listen to it because they are joined by CBS Sports College basketball analyst Clark Kellogg to discuss the Final Four, including his pick to win it all.
Who do you have winning it all?
I got Duke. I just think they're in a position now, and I think they've got the best player remaining in the field, quite honestly. Paolo Banchero. I think he's the best player, not just the best pro prospect. I think he's the best player at the collegiate level. His size, his ability to do everything, his confidence. I love his passing ability. And then, so I've got them beating Kansas. I think Villanova is going to give up a lot more, is going to provide a lot more resistance than people think, even though they lost a key starter in Justin Moore. I think these other guys, even though it's a short rotation, are going to rise up. And somebody in that non-playing group from Villanova is probably going to get some minutes and hold up pretty good. That first game after a key guy is lost, to me, is the most dangerous game for the other team because the guys that are shorthanded are really anxious to prove that we can get it done. And they sometimes play for that injured player. And that's a significant motivating factor. And that coach over on that sideline is as good as it gets in college, Jay Wright. There's nobody any better than Jay as a coach and tactician in college basketball.
Yeah, Kansas and Villanova are going to be that early game Saturday night, 6 o'clock. And then you get Duke and North Carolina meeting for the first time ever in the tournament, which I'm sure is a fun little fact that you have heard a bajillion times. And guess what? It's only Wednesday, and you're going to hear it a lot more. We do have a panel here this morning to talk about some NBA stuff because there were some big storylines going down last night around the association. So as we look at the Western Conference standings here, PG-13 returning last night, sparking a huge Clippers comeback. Suns are the top seed. They have it locked in. They have all week. They face a far different Warriors team tonight. The Mavs, this was the big story here outside of like Eastern Conference with Giannis doing his thing. Mavs mashing the Lakers, which means that the playoffs started today, and they do not. Not only would LA miss the playoffs, they would miss the play-in as well. DraftKings contributors Jeff Pratt, Julian Edlow, good morning, gentlemen. It's good to see you. Jules, the margin for error for the Lakers is like razor thin right now. How do you like their chances of making the postseason at this point in time?
I hate their chances to make the postseason because they're a bad team and they don't have their best players. And that just generally doesn't work. At some point, we have to give up on the Lakers, and it probably should have been a long time ago, and it's definitely now. LeBron is seriously hurt. We'll see if he plays again this season. The idea of getting Anthony Davis back is great, but he still hasn't played in ages, and so he's going to have some rust to knock off. And we know, how fragile he can be in general. Russell Westbrook is a negative on the floor, and all you can count on for him on a nightly basis is to get into a fight with a reporter and storm off the podium. There's nothing good to like about the Lakers right now, so I give them 0% chance of making the postseason. All
right, Lakers currently plus 600 to make the playoffs. Jeff, how do you feel about those odds? Anthony Davis hasn't played since the All-Star break, expected to return Friday. However, LeBron James missing last night's loss. He's out through at least tomorrow's game against the Jazz.
Yeah, I'm with Julian. I just don't feel good whatsoever about the Lakers' odds of making the play, and they have to show us something to give us, optimism that they can do it. And as of right now, that's just not the case. This team, as Julian was saying, just isn't good without LeBron, and his availability moving forward is in serious question after that ankle injury. And Anthony Davis, like you said, Emerson, he's supposed to come back Friday, but who knows how effective he'll actually be. He's been out since February with that mid-foot sprain, and who knows, maybe he gets injured again. He's another one of those guys who's extremely injury prone. This team's trending in the wrong direction, and even if they do manage to sneak into the 10 spot and make the play-in tournament, they'll likely have to travel to San Antonio or New Orleans, win there, and then travel to the Wolves, Nuggets, Clippers, or Jazz in order to just earn a spot in the playoffs. They might win that first playing game, but they're not beating any of the teams I mentioned in that second matchup.
Yeah, Jules, they need their two superstars to return to form ASAP. I'm looking at the record in March. LA 4-11. Only the Thunder and Trailblazers are worse. Do you think that they should just shut down LeBron James the rest of the way?
No, because this team also isn't built to tank. you got these guys, so you might as well go for it and try and pull the upset and, get a play-in seed. And then if you have LeBron and he does wind up being healthy, try and win a couple games. Like I said, I give it very, very little chance to happen. But there's just no point in shutting it down when you have this much invested in this many guys and you open the season as one of the title favorites.
And Jules, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Lakers had the second shortest odds out of anyone to win the title in the preseason, or did they have the best odds?
I think it was just the Nets and then the Lakers.
Okay.
Don't quote me. Maybe Jeff knows, but they were in the top 3 to win it all.
Okay. Let's go ahead and just take a gander at tonight. We got 11 games on the board. Jeff, what's your favorite spread?
Emerson, I have to go back to the Celtics. They're coming off an overtime loss in Toronto where Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford were all out. Those guys are all back tonight, and I expect Boston to cover this 5-point spread, even without Robert Williams, against the Miami Heat. These are 2 top seeds in the East that are heading in complete opposite directions. Boston's 8-2 in their last 10. Miami's 4-6, including bad losses to the Knicks, Warriors, and Nets. We know how good the Heat are defensively, but their offensive limitations have always been very concerning to me. Between Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero, they only have 2 guys averaging over 20 points per game, and both of them are just barely clearing 20 on a nightly basis. That's not enough firepower to get it done in the playoffs, and it's not enough to get it done against the league's best defense.
Yeah, Jules, Eastern Conference is coming down to the wire. 4 teams within 1.5 games of each other, including Miami and Boston. But Jeff made a good point. Like, since that little sideline kerfuffle, like Miami just seems to be regressing, collapsing, imploding.
Yeah, Jeff mentioned whatever it was, the Nets, Knicks, and Warriors losses. You can also throw the Sixers loss in there without Embiid and Harden. And the Warriors one was without Steph, Clay, Dre, Otto Porter. Whatever happened in Miami, it's not good. So I had the same spot circled. I'm going to the same spots down the stretch. You're going to see a lot of the same plays out of me, and it's been Celtics. And no Rob Williams. I'm going to play the Celtics because I don't like Miami right now. They're headed in the wrong direction. The Celtics, they blew out the Wolves again. They've been blowing everybody out on Sunday. And then they took what seemed to be, it would have been great to get that game in Toronto, but they took what seemed to be an obvious rest day. You're home, teams going out of the country to Toronto, and then coming back Wednesday at home to play a huge game in terms of the 1 seed against Miami. So why not just keep those guys home, rest them up, and take advantage of this spot? And I think that's what they're going to do.
Jules, how about a game total you think is intriguing? We got 233.5, the highest on the board for a couple games. You got Nuggets and Pacers, and then also looking at Grizz and Spurs with the same total.
Yeah, I don't really play game totals, occasional in-game totals or team totals or whatever. But if you follow me on Twitter, you know what I do play is Grizzlies first quarter team total over. And the Grizzlies play tonight. It lost last game. It's lost 3 times in the last maybe like 10 days or so here. But it doesn't change the fact that Grizzlies first quarter team total is on a 23-4 run to the over, and they play the Spurs, who are a decent first quarter over team. Doesn't matter if they have Ja Morant, no problem. Grizzlies over 29.5 team total first quarter against the San Antonio Spurs. Like I said, like the Celtics, I'm just going back to the same spots over and over to round out the regular season.
Okay, Jeff, we know you like to go back to the same spot over and over when it comes to the Boston Celtics, which, by the way, that game, lowest total on the board, 213.5.
Yeah, I'm not looking at that one, but Julian and I apparently are just looking at every same game because I'm going to the Grizzlies and Spurs as well. I am looking at that game total, though, as you said, Emerson, it's currently set at 233.5, and that just feels too low considering how explosive both of these offenses have been lately. Over their last 3 games, Memphis is the highest scoring team in the league, racking up just under 128 points per game, and the Spurs aren't too far behind, averaging 121 points over their last 3. San Antonio is really closing the season strong. We talked about it earlier. They just passed the Lakers to move into the final play-in spot yesterday. This one should probably be a track meet, and even if these teams cool down a little bit, I think there's enough offensive firepower here to hit the over.
All right, guys, we are tight on time. We are out of time for this one, but appreciate the help. We are still on Tiger Watch coming up. Jeff and Len will join us. Also, AJ's Penguins failing to score 11 goals in back-to-back games. But next, let's talk some best bets when it comes to runs batted in Major League Baseball. Got some future bets coming up. All right, opening day around Major League Baseball, 1 week from tomorrow, April 7th. It's my sister's birthday. Salvador Perez, the leader in the RBI department with 121 last season. Jose Abreu just 4 behind that. And then you have the best 13-year-old in Major League Baseball history, Rafael Devers, $113. That's gorgeous. That also tied with Adam Duvall. Matt Olson, Vlad Guerrero Jr., 111. Don't see it there on the screen, but trust me, DraftKings contributors, Nick Fryer, Gary and Thorne, good morning, guys. Let's talk some RBI props, shall we? Let's go ahead and look at the prop who's going to be the leader, overall leader in the RBIs, you say RBI or RBIs? I say RBI. 2022 for MLB. So right now we have Vlad Guerrero Jr., the favorite, plus 800 on the DK Sportsbook, guys. That's tied for 5th most in the majors last year. Again, 111. How much do you like him as the favorite here? Gary, and I'll start with you. That's your hometown team.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Vladdy when it comes to counting stats is he's only actually missed 1 game the last 2 seasons, which, big storyline in Toronto, his rookie season, especially considering he was 19, 20 years old, was conditioning and the fact that he had regimented days off and things like that. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So when you're looking at these stats, at the end of the day, we can break down as many advanced statistics as we want, but it's kind of luck and volume based. It's just about which one of these guys is going to end up having the most plate appearances and playing the most games, is not going to spend a day on the 15-day IL. So, yeah, I think Vlad's got a pretty good chance, especially when you consider who's hitting in front of him, who's getting on base in front of him. The fact that Fangraphs has the Jays as one of just 3 teams in baseball projected to average over 5 runs per game. I think he's justified being the favorite. Now, generally speaking, I don't like betting the favorite. I think someone like, even Freddie Freeman's 25-1, which I think is a little surprising considering the Dodgers are one of those other 3 teams that happen to be projected for over 5 runs per game. You look at some of the OBP guys who are hitting above him or around him. We don't really know how that Dodgers lineup is going to shake out quite yet, but like Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, all getting on base, probably in front of Freddie Freeman. And the fact that maybe the Dodgers won't be as inclined to sort of give some of their guys a couple rest days now that the IL is back to 15 days and not 10 days. Now that they have a DH spot to kind of put some of these guys in and give them a half day off every now and then. So I think Freeman at 25-1 is probably my favorite bet on the board, but I don't have any problem with Vlad being the favorite.
Okay, Nick, do you have a problem with Vlad being the favorite here? Made a serious run at the Triple Crown last year.
No, of course not. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with Vlad in any capacity, although yesterday that we were proven incorrect with Steve's takes on his home runs and everything. But I'm not going to go with him, even though he's at plus 800 right now. If you go down like 11 guys, all the way at number 12, you see a few guys that have 20-1 odds. Jose Abreu is among those guys. 4 off the lead last year, you highlighted earlier, Emerson. 123 2 years ago, of course, had the shortened season in 2020, but he was on pace to have a big year that year as well if they played the full 162. And last year too, I know Gary brought up how we're looking more at the counting stats and more at how games played and plate appearances matter. Absolutely 100% agree with that. But what I like seeing from Abreu too is last year kind of had an off year in the sense he only hit 261, had an 831 OPS, still finished just short of Salvador Perez's leading RBI count. So for me, I think if you're looking for best bang for your buck, I think Abreu's the guy to go with. As much as I think Vladdy is a reasonable one to take at plus 800, Abreu's my guy to win it this year.
Well, let's look at some other individual props while you guys are here. So Matt Olson, again, tying with Vlad last season, 111, but he's now going to be swinging the bat in Atlanta for the Braves. RBI total prop set at 109.5. So how confident are you in him actually getting there, Garion?
So again, this is one of those numbers where you're essentially projecting him to play over 155 games this season. And just in general, the smart money is on the under here. I just think that, one oblique strain, one really bad stub toe, who even knows? It's just one trip to the 15-day IL, and I don't think Matt Olson gets to this number. So I'll take the under, considering only 7 players, and Olsen was among those 7 players, but only 7 guys actually got to this threshold last season. And, I think there's a little bit of baked-in regression for Matt Olson this year. I mean, he's coming off arguably the greatest season of his career. He is moving to a better hitter's ballpark, leaving the Coliseum, but you've got some really nice pitching staffs in that National League East. I mean, he's going up against the Mets and the Marlins and the Phillies. And also the fact that he just suddenly went from a guy who strikes out like 27, 28% of the time to 16% of the time. I think all the projection systems have his strikeout rate, just trickling up a couple percentage points again. Like it doesn't take much for him to finish this season at like 104, 105. So I think with a little bit of regression, maybe a little bit of injury bad luck, he goes under this number.
All right, Nick, how close does he get to 109.5, or does he exceed it?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a close one. I'm going to go and back him this year. I'm very high on Matt Olson going into the season. Biggest reason, of course, being the ballpark, which Garion highlighted a little bit. Just moving to a different division, moving to a different league. What am I saying? But he's got a better lineup, too, so he's going to have some semblance of protection around him where he's been playing in Oakland this whole time. I know we're going to see more of the impact on the home run total versus the RBI count. But when you look at the 162 game projections over the last few seasons, he would be hitting this number with regularity. I know he was only doing it last season. And, of course, injuries are a concern, but I think that the difference that the lineup is going to make for him this year is going to help put him over this hump, even if he plays a little bit less than he did last season.
All right, Nick, let's talk about last year's NL MVP here. So Bryce Harper, total set at 97.5. I know in Philly there's been some improvements made to the lineup there. So you think that's going to help Harper go over this number?
It's going to help Harper out quite a bit, and I do like the over on his home run total, but this is where Gary and I kind of fall in line in terms of the injuries and everything and missing a certain amount of time. It looks like Harper needs to get at least 150 games in to have a chance at this number. He's gone, aside from 2020, he's gone over this number in 3 of the last 6 full MLB seasons. And look, it's not that I don't think that he can't hit this if he's healthy the whole time. Yeah, sure, great. He'll definitely hit it if he's healthy, but I don't trust that we're going to see him play 150 games over the entirety of this season, just with built-in time off. And if an injury pops up, I think this is a guy who you kind of manage his health a little bit more so than maybe an Olsen would necessarily. So no, I'm going to go under on Harper's RBI total.
Yeah, Gary, health is always so key with this dude.
Yeah, but it's funny. Regardless of what I've already said, I do actually like this over. I think this number's low enough where even if he does spend 15 days on the IL, I still think he can get there. And I know the RBI total specifically was underwhelming last season, especially considering all of his other statistics just being, elite across the board. But a big part of that was, as you mentioned earlier, Emerson, lineup protection. I mean, this is a guy who was playing for a team that was ravaged by injuries. And when you look at his numbers with runners in scoring position, this is someone who had a 23.2% walk rate when he was batting with runners in scoring position. That was the 3rd highest walk rate in all of baseball. He just wasn't getting anything to hit. He was actually intentionally walked 14 times last season, which was the 4th most of any player in baseball. I just don't think you can do that with Nick Castellanos now hitting behind him, with Rhys Hoskins, hopefully a healthy Rhys Hoskins, hitting behind Castellanos. I just think the lineup construction is so different this season for the Phillies as opposed to where it was last season that You just can't pitch around Bryce Harper the same way teams were last season. So I actually think his RBI total is going to go way up from where it was in 2021.
Nick, I know a lot of people think your friend there, Rafael Devers, could make a run at like a 50-homer season here sooner rather than later, a foe of Garion and his Blue Jays. So he had 113 RBI last year. That was actually his second best output of his career, RBI output. So his 2022 total this year, 113 and a half. So do you envision another big season for Devers?
Yeah, one would think so. And I mean, the big thing for him, again, like with any of these other guys, is the amount of games that they're playing over the course of the season. And he's played 156 games in the last 2 full MLB seasons. And if he had the chance to play 156 games in 2020, he also would have gone over this number. Obviously came up a little bit short last year. But the big thing with him is we saw, obviously, a dip in terms of average last season after a huge year in 2019 all around. Also saw a pretty big dip in terms of power. I know he hit 6 more home runs, but he also had 17 less doubles than he did in 2019, but still right around this mark. You're adding Trevor Story to the lineup, so this lineup just continues to get a little bit deeper. As much as I don't expect him to be Trevor Story that he was in Colorado, still a nice healthy addition to this lineup in Fenway Park. Should still help that guy out quite a bit. But by and large, yes, Devers' health hasn't been an issue with him. He's going to be in the lineup. He's got protection around him. So yeah, I think he can hit the over on this mark.
Yeah, Gary, and he's quietly become one of the league's best hitters, man.
Sure, quietly. That's one way to look at it. I'm sure
I mean,
the Boston baseball market, always quiet about baseball.
Oh, for sure. I'm just meant like 11th in the MVP voting with those numbers last year. Kind of crazy.
Sure. So I'm going to take the under on this number. Again, just sort of it's a big number. It's a huge number. And I think that the one thing, I'm not concerned at all about the offensive potential of the Red Sox. If there's anything to be concerned about, it's the pitching staff. So that's not the reason. It's not lineup construction here. From a who's in the lineup standpoint that worries me a little bit about Devers, it's kind of just what Alex Cora is going to do with him. Because if we've seen anything so far this spring, it's that Devers might now be the Red Sox number 2 hitter, which in general could mean more plate appearances at the end of the season, like maybe 30 or 40 plate appearances by the end of the season. But this is someone who took 527 of his plate appearances last year, either batting cleanup or 5th. And if he's hitting second, I just don't see that as maybe an opportunity for his RBI total to increase. It's more likely that his runs total will increase. So that's really my concern right now with Devers, is where he's actually going to be hitting in this Red Sox lineup, because he might be more of a run scoring position than a run driving in position if he's going to be hitting second for the duration of the season.
All right. Now we know how you feel about Rafael Devers there, Garen. We'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the season, you hater.
You literally skipped over Teoscar Hernandez.
He's only 13.
RBIs last season.
Whatever, pal. Okay. Oh, my God, Gary, you got to stop this, dude. Nick, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're going to talk about hockey right after this. All right, guys, back here on the Sweats, we're talking sticky puck. And would you look at this over in the Metro? Rangers winning on Tuesday night and leapfrogging Pittsburgh. I believe that's their second win against the Penguins in like a week span. And AJ Scholes and RotoWire's Paul Bruno. AJ, why did your boys fail to score 11 goals in back-to-back games?
I mean, I wish. Yeah, look, first off, I mean, step in the right direction. They didn't get embarrassed. 3-2, perfectly acceptable loss compared to the previous night that was 5-1. Look, honestly, the biggest thing here was the turnovers. The Rangers are such a fast team that if you commit a turnover, you're not going to be able to catch them as they're headed the other way. and you're basically going to play into their strengths. And the Penguins' numbers on turnovers were really, really bad. The Rangers capitalized on it. So if you're going to beat them, whether you're the Penguins or anybody else, you definitely need to clean up that aspect of your game. And as far as Pittsburgh goes, for years, they've kind of just outskilled their opponents, right? They haven't had to be big, maybe fast, but yeah, they've outskilled the other team. And this is a club that is built around skill and also manages to have size. I mean, this is a really good, fast, young team. And they're going to be hard to beat, just straight up. So if Pittsburgh can clean it up, maybe they have a chance. But after it looks right now, that first playoff series might just be 4 games, man.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it right now.
Yeah, likely a first-round Stanley Cup playoff matchup. It will be close, Paul. Which side would you back if that was to be a meeting in the first round?
I'm backing the Penguins. I don't know why AJ's waving the white flag. That was a low-event hockey game. First of all, and it could have been a coin flip. It was a 1-goal decision. AJ, you're talking like they got shelled last night. They absolutely didn't. And I would still take their big guns over the Rangers in tried and tested fashion. They're going to deliver. Don't you worry. But you guys are burying the lead again. The Leafs played Boston last night, and they handled it. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Taylor Hall should be suspended as well. That was a punch in the side of the head, reminiscent of the Steve Moore incident with Todd Bertuzzi, and nobody's talking about that at all. In fact, he got a $5,000 fine. That's garbage, okay? So let's talk about that for a sec. The Bruins got embarrassed right in their own barn, and that was the best response they had. That's garbage.
What about the boarding before that?
Boarding? The guy got up right away. He wasn't even hurt. He was up on his feet, ready to take a shot at the guy, a defenseless Boston player. That is garbage.
All right, Hall was fined $5,000 this morning.
Big whoop.
For front. I don't know, $5,000 is a lot of money.
For me and you,
for us, man, for us.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Not for Taylor Hall.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I know that's y'all's appearance fee like every day here on the show. Like you could easily afford that. Let's turn our attention to tonight here, guys. Opening face-off here. So let's choose between some of the DFS plays. We'll see if we get some sports betting mixed in there. Hook me up with your favorite DFS play at center, Paul.
You know what? Big game at Edmonton against Los Angeles tonight. I look for Draisaitl to show up in a big way, saving $800 off McDavid. He's actually outscoring him in terms of goals, and that's where the points are at in DK. So I take Draisaitl out of those two guys. But if you want to save some money at center, go to Mark Scheifele. He's on a tear with 5 goals, 13 points in his last 10 games. Traveling to Buffalo tonight, that's a soft touch of late, unless they play the Maple Leafs, then they play like Tigers. So he'll cost $6,500. Another cheap but solid option in the middle is Thomas Hertl, who has 4 goals and 12 points, and with 28 shots on goal, his last 10 starts, he gets the not too intimidating Arizona Coyotes tonight.
All right, who are you looking at, AJ?
Well, I mean, I know it's the second night of a back-to-back, but honestly, Detroit playing, or rather the Rangers playing Detroit, I think is a good opportunity to stack some Rangers here. I understand maybe it's somewhat of a trap game. You just had a big win over Pittsburgh. You're now second in the division, and you have to play a lower competition team in Detroit. But I think it's a great opportunity. Paul, I think you're underselling how good the Rangers are as a team here. So I'll stick with that stack and start with Mika Zabinijad coming in at $6,900 here. 4 goals, 7 assists, 23 shots in his last 10 games. For their part, the Wings are allowing 33.4 shots per game. That's 6th most in the league. So at minimum, these Rangers should have decent floors across the board. But I think you take a look at that first line, and especially Zabinijad right there in the middle.
I mean, it does feel like they have the impact players at the right positions, and they're good, and especially after you consider who they acquired at the trade deadline there, too. So where do you want to go at wing, AJ?
Well, I'm going to go right back there.
Yeah.
You mentioned the trade deadline acquisition, Frank Vatrano. He's got 5 goals in 7 games with the Rangers here. He comes in at a bare minimum price tag. So I really think you stick with him in the spot there and then double down and go with Chris Kreider. I recommended him yesterday at 6,100, picked up a goal. He's jumped up to 7,000, so that's a little bit pricier. But I think it's worth it. You go full first line stack. The benefit of Vatrano there is, he's 2,800, so he's makes that line affordable to get them all in there, and a great opportunity here.
Paul, who's your guy on the wing?
I'm going to start with Chris Kreider, the fifth most expensive winger at $7,000. Enjoying a career best season. We all know that. And he's on fire of late. 7 goals in his last 10 games played. He gets the best matchup against a very bad Detroit team. So that's why I'm focused there. But if you want to save a little money, you go to Nikolai Ehlers. Once again, a force for the Jets. He faces Buffalo tonight, potting 5 goals in his last 10 games. Also a very good shooter in terms of the volume. He's got 40 shots on goal in his last 10. And then David Perron as well, maybe the hottest of all the wingers in action tonight, got 11 goals and 15 points on 30 shots. He's priced cheaper than both of these guys.
But remember, Paul, the other day, like super high on all those Blackhawks players, and we saw what like Buffalo ended up doing. So you got to proceed with caution there. AJ, are we going to make it, 4 shows in a row where you're going to pay up on the blue line?
It depends how you want to define pay up, but no, I'm not going to the very top of the price range. So look, on the year, the Arizona Coyotes have allowed a league high 35.5 shots per game, and their PK is sitting at just 73.5%. And all that points to targeting the Sharks tonight. For me, I think you look at Erik Karlsson for $5,700. See, I'm not even taking Brent Burns. So I'm not going the most expensive Shark defenseman here. He's not going to break the bank, obviously, compared to the top of that price range. Solid matchup, averaging 2.1 shots per game in 9 contests back from injury. There haven't been a lot of opportunities to use the Sharks this year, but I think going up against Arizona, this is a good spot to be in. And I like Karlsson at under 6K. They're doubling down. Both those guys, Burns and Karlsson, are on the #1 power play, so you get that side of it. But look, it should be a shot-heavy game tonight, and it'll come from the point, absolutely.
Yeah, speaking of some heavy power play love, Paul, Adam Fox there for the Rangers, right there at the top.
Exactly. You're reading my notes there, Emerson, because I love this matchup. I don't normally pay up, but he's playing against the lowly Detroit Red Wings, and he's the hottest scorer among the top-end defensemen. So that makes good sense to spend the $6,400 tonight. If you feel a little bit antsy about that, there are a couple of cheaper options, though, that I'll focus on as well. Tyson Barrie, costing only $4,400, remains the Oilers' PP quarterback. That's a great assignment as long as they're cooking the way they are right now. He's got 9 points in his last 10 games. And then Josh Morris, he's assumed the same role recently in Winnipeg, and they're on fire too. He's got 32 shots on goal in his last 10 games, along with his 4 goals, and that'll cost $4,800 tonight. So a couple of cheaper options than Fox, but boy, he's got a great matchup.
All right, dudes, we are out of time here. We are done talking hockey. We're going to talk golf next. Anyone else with other like DFS or some sports betting questions in the land of the NHL, follow these 2 dudes. Listen to these 2 dudes over on the social media and their podcast. So we have golf next, the latest on Tiger Woods. Len and Jeff are here right after this quick break. Tiger Watch has been absolutely intense over the last 24 hours or so. Our PGA Tour panel this morning, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire senior golf writer Len Hochberg. Before we get to this week's tournament, Len, Jeff yesterday proclaiming that if Tiger Woods wins the Masters this year, I will get a tattoo of a tiger slapping a golden bear. Now, we've all seen the reports of Tiger working hard at Augusta. I mean, heck, his kid Charlie was there, got to miss school for that, to go hang out with Justin Thomas on the range. Our first chase or fade question for this segment is this, Len. Chase or fade that we see Tiger compete in just over a week?
Yeah, I don't even know where. There's a lot to unpack with what Jeff had to say there. I mean, I don't even know where. How much time do we have here? Is this even a golf question, or was that
just go ahead? You just
just a cry for help or something?
Yeah.
I'm But is it weird that I'm thinking where would it go on the
Well,
Jeff's body?
that's very
Super
easy.
weird.
No. It's lower back. That's exactly where he's putting it.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking it's too much for an ankle or something like that. Yeah, it must be sweet that Charlie got to miss school and go with Tiger. I mean, I hung out with my kid yesterday. We went to Home Depot. Not quite the same, but yeah. To get to your point, he obviously wants to play. It looks like he will be able to play. I mean, if chase or fade Tiger plays, I say Tiger plays. Whether he's worth paying $8,500 for, that's another question.
Okay, Jeff, anything new cooking between the ears after the news of the past 24 hours?
No, I just want to reiterate, I have great calves. That's like the number one body part that's in front right now. But I definitely think that you will see Tiger play. I mean, I don't think that he's going to be putting this much effort in and not crossing the finish line and getting to that starting line. So I think there's a very, very good chance we're going to see him play at the very least. Like Len said, using him as in a DFS option or a lineup or betting on him is a quite different story. But it really does look like he's going to tee it up, and I'd almost be shocked at this point if he doesn't.
All right, the poor Valero Texas Open. It's like, what about me? Because we do have a tournament this week before next week. We have Rory at the top of the salary board here, guys, at 11-2. But what about Hideki Matsuyama? Jeff, we know he's been sidelined with that back injury. He pulled out late after the first round teed off the Players. But he is 10-8 at this event. So chase or fade that you're willing to take a shot on him here.
I'm just going to fade it. We can make contrarian options, and Rory McIlroy is certainly going to push, most likely 30% owned in a lot of GPP contests this week on DraftKings. But, there's a $400 difference here we're talking about. Hideki is not cheap. You basically have to fade the supreme chalk with Rory McIlroy. And look, I think this course sets up well for Hideki if he was coming in with, like you mentioned, not a little bit of health issues, not the Masters next week, which he's certainly going to be focusing on. He's obviously got to host the dinner in less than a week at this point too. So there's just too many factors here for me to really like pivoting to Hideki Matsuyama. I think if you're going to pivot this week, you go down to Bryson DeChambeau at 10,200. I would rather take a shot with Bryson. He's got that supreme birdie rate, and we know he's at least back from injury. He's had that one start under his belt as well. So I'm going to fade Hideki here. I think the better pivot, if you're going off of Rory, is to go down to Bryson.
Yeah, Len, I mean, the question if he's going to be able to defend his master title, that appears to have been put to rest with his commitment to this week. But is he healthy enough for you to roster him at this price point?
No, I don't think so. I don't see a reason to. I mean, historically with this tournament, we just see a lot of long shots come in and play well and win this tournament. I think, this is such a crazy week. It's such a middle week after the match play, before the Masters. We don't know what these guys are thinking. Rory wasn't even there until he was at the Masters yesterday. I mean, I'm not sure about Hideki with his back. I think he just wants to get ready for next week. There's so many questions here. Definitely going to stay away from Hideki this week.
And then, Jeff, let's talk some Tony Finau here real quick. We got 3 minutes left in show. He's missed the cut in 3 of his last 4 events, but I think I saw you tweeting at Reed T. Fowler. You're actually back in Tony this week. Is that true?
I do like this setup for Tony Finau. He made 8 birdies last Friday in 16 holes against Xander Schauffele. He really hasn't been striking it that poorly. You look at his proximity stats, he's still up there. He's still hitting his long irons well. He gained over 6 strokes on approach at the Genesis. Tony's short game has just been, it's kind of been a hot mess, but that can flip really quickly. We saw him perform extremely well in that area towards the end of last year. He's just too good a player to keep underperforming. And at 9,100, I think he's just very, very kind of undervalued for this field. I think Finau does pop this week, and he's shown in the past too. He can put 3 or 4 bad performances aside and just pop up at big events. And I think you're going to see him compete this week. I really do.
Yeah, Len, Jeff may be onto something here. He hasn't cracked the top 10 since he won the Northern Trust, but that short game and putting are the culprit. That's the reason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see, he could pop at any time. It'll be interesting next week for Finau because he's historically done very well at the Masters, dislocated ankle or not. But like you said, he has not had a top 10 other than the Hero World Challenge, which doesn't count.
Yeah.
Did he make a deal with the devil to win the Northern Trust? He's just not playing very well. Yeah, I had a few good holes against Xander Schauffele. I'm not going to go anywhere near Tony Finau this week.
All right, guys, you both have about 20, 25 seconds here to answer this. Give us your favorite DFS play to chase at the Valero Texas Open. Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, I think this is wide open. I like it. $8,000. Patton Kizzire. A couple of years ago, he was close to 400 in the world. A good week this week gets him inside the top 100. He's doing it with strokes gained approach, more than usual putting, playing very well. Good play, only 8,000.
Yeah, he's made 7 of 8 cuts in 2022. Jeff, who's your pick this week, dude?
I mean, I like the Kizzire call. I'm going to go with the similar range player. I'm going to go with Doug Gim, a guy I mentioned yesterday. He's coming off a top 10 at the Players, very talented young player who's a really good amateur. He's got that strokes gain approach and that solid ball striking you need at TPC San Antonio. I think you're going to see a big week from Doug Gim, 7,600.
All right, good stuff. Jeff, you, me, Reed T. Fowler, we'll talk a lot more golf. We'll talk some NFL overtime. We'll talk some Masters. We'll talk Tiger. Coming up tonight, 5 o'clock, the slate on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch pages. I hope all of you can join us. Len, appreciate you, dude. We'll see you next week. Everybody, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Madden starts here on YouTube and Twitch at high noon.